have you ever felt like no matter how much love, attention, or recognition you receive, it's never quite enough? You smile when you're supposed to. You achieve the things they said would bring happiness, degrees, promotions, even relationships. But still, something inside remains restless, untouched, aching. Maybe you've caught yourself thinking, if only they saw me, if only I were enough for them, then I'd feel whole. But here's the quiet truth. What we chase outside is often a reflection of what we're afraid to uncover within. We've been conditioned to believe that our worth is something to be earned, through perfection, performance, or pleasing others. As if love is a trophy we must win by sacrificing our essence. We learn to outsource our value, to seek it in mirrors held by others. But mirrors lie, especially when we don't know the face behind the reflection. This illusion of lack doesn't begin in adulthood. It starts in the silent moments of childhood, when love felt conditional, when our joy was too loud, our sadness too inconvenient, our truth too uncomfortable for those around us. So we trimmed parts of ourselves to fit their comfort. We became smaller, quieter, more acceptable. And in that silence, a belief took root. I must become what they want, so I can be loved. But this belief is a thief. It steals your center and scatters it across every interaction, every hope for validation, every desperate effort to feel enough. We forget that love was never meant to be begged for, that our wholeness is not a gift others grant us, it's a home within us, waiting to be remembered. Imagine this. You're in a vast forest at dusk. You walk and walk, hoping to find shelter, warmth, someone to tell you you're safe. But every path leads to more trees, more shadows. You're exhausted. And then, you stop. You breathe. And in that pause you notice something. A faint light glowing from your chest. It was there all along. Small, quiet, but steady. This is what it means to come back to yourself. To stop searching for the light outside and remember, you are the fire. The illusion of lack was never about what others failed to give you. It was always about the moment you forgot you were already whole. What if, just for today, you stopped reaching out and started turning in? What if the love you've been dying to receive is the very love your soul is longing for you to give yourself? The world has taught you to search, but your soul has always known the way back. Back to your center, back to your truth, back to your own beating heart. And maybe that's where the revolution begins, not with grand gestures or loud declarations, but in the quiet, courageous act of choosing yourself. Again and again, until there is no more illusion. Only presence, only peace, only love, your love. Why does rejection cut so deep, even when it comes from people we no longer want in our lives? Why does a simple no, a closed door, or a cold silence awaken a pain that feels older than the moment? Because often it is. Most of us are not reacting to this rejection. We are responding to that one, the first one. The one that came when we were too young to understand it, too innocent to protect ourselves from it. Maybe you were the child who felt invisible, the one who had to become the good one, the helper, the fixer, because that was the only way to be noticed. Or perhaps you were the loud one, the angry one, the wild one, not because you were bad, but because that was your soul's protest against being unseen. In both cases, your nervous system recorded a memory. Love is not safe. I must earn it. I must shapeshift. I must shrink or explode or disappear. And so you grew up with a silent vow. I will never be rejected again. But that vow has a cost. Because to avoid rejection, you start to reject yourself. You say yes when your soul screams no. You stay in places that make you small. You apologize for your needs, your voice, your dreams. And every time you betray yourself to be accepted, the original wound bleeds a little more. Rejection hurts so deeply because it confirms a lie you were taught early on. I am not enough as I am. But what if it's not rejection at all? What if life is simply removing you from places that cannot hold your light? What if every no is not a personal failure, but a divine redirection? Picture this. There's a child holding a fragile, cracked bowl, begging people to pour love into it. But no matter how much they pour, it leaks, because the bowl was broken long ago. Now imagine that same child sitting down finally, not to beg but to mend, carefully, tenderly, piece by piece, with gold. This is the work of healing rejection. It's not about getting others to love you more. It's about loving the parts of you that were left out in the cold. It's about whispering to the child within, you never needed to earn love. You were always worthy of it. And here's the deeper truth. Every soul has known the ache of being misunderstood, dismissed, or abandoned. But those who rise, those who find their center, are the ones who stop chasing approval and start offering presence to themselves. Rejection is not the enemy. Rejection is a mirror. It shows you where you are still waiting to be chosen. So choose yourself, not once, not loudly, but every quiet morning, every trembling boundary, every sacred no. Because you're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You're here to remember it. And from that place, the revolution begins. How many times have you smiled when you wanted to cry? How often have you said, I'm fine, when a storm was raging inside? And who are you when no one is watching? There's a mask we wear, a carefully crafted image, a version of ourselves designed to fit, to belong, to be admired. It's the one who says the right things, who keeps the peace, who earns approval like oxygen. This is the persona. It's not evil. It's not wrong. It was born out of necessity. The persona is how we survived, how we avoided shame, how we made it through families, schools, relationships that couldn't hold our full truth. But the danger lies not in wearing the mask. The danger is forgetting that we're wearing it at all. Over time, the line between who we are and who we pretend to be becomes blurred. We become experts in pleasing, in performing, in disappearing behind a version of ourselves that others find comfortable. And every compliment to that mask feels like both a reward and a quiet betrayal. Because deep down, you know, they love who I show them. But would they still love me if they saw who I really am? This is the wound of the performer, the ache of the invisible soul behind the smile. We trade authenticity for acceptance, and the price is heavy: anxiety, exhaustion, emotional numbness, because it takes enormous energy to keep the mask in place. And in doing so, we slowly lose touch with the raw, beautiful, unfiltered self beneath it all. Imagine this. You're on a stage under bright lights. The audience claps. You've delivered your lines perfectly. But when the curtain falls and you're alone in the dressing room, there's a deep, echoing silence. You remove the costume, the makeup, and you stare at the mirror wondering, who am I when the show ends? This is the soul's yearning, not for applause, but for realness. To be seen, not for what you do, but for who you are. And here's the paradox. The very love we crave cannot reach us when we're hidden behind a mask. The persona might win approval, but it cannot receive love, because love can only meet you where you are willing to be seen. So what would happen if, little by little, you began to take the mask off? Not all at once, not recklessly, but gently, courageously. What if you allowed your truth to breathe? What if you let your no be heard without guilt? What if you let your messy, raw, beautiful self speak? You might lose some people, yes, but you'll find yourself, and the ones who stay, they'll be loving the real you, not the performance. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the one you were before the world told you to be someone else. That too is revolution. Not a loud rebellion, but a quiet shedding, a homecoming. Because beneath the persona is the person, and that person is more than enough. How many times have you left yourself just to make sure no one else would? How many moments have you silenced your intuition, softened your truth, or swallowed your needs, just to avoid conflict, rejection, or loneliness? Self-abandonment doesn't always look dramatic. Often it wears a smile. It sounds like, it's okay, I'll handle it. It looks like staying quiet when your soul is screaming. It feels like tension in your chest after you say yes, when everything in you wanted to say no. And the most painful part, you become your own captor, your own jailer. You trade pieces of your soul for crumbs of safety, Because somewhere, long ago, you learned that love might leave, but survival cannot. You weren't wrong. As a child, survival meant attachment. You had to be who they needed you to be. You had to tune into everyone else's emotions before your own. You learned to read the room like scripture, searching for signs that it was safe to exist. But in becoming what they wanted, you began to forget who you were, and now, as an adult, the pattern continues. You overfunction, you overgive, you overstay, all in the name of keeping love. But here's the deep truth. If you have to abandon yourself to keep love, it's not love. It's a bargain. And your soul was never meant to live in chains. Picture this. There's a garden inside you. Once vibrant, full of wildflowers and sunlight. But over time, piece by piece, you fenced it off. Certain flowers were too much, others not enough. You shut the gates, hoping someone would come and say, "I see you. I choose you." But no one can find you behind the walls you built to be accepted. And so the garden waits, unseen, unloved. Not because it's unworthy, but because you stopped visiting it too. This is the shadow of self-abandonment. It whispers, "Be small, and you'll be safe." It promises, "Give them everything and maybe they'll stay." But the cost is your essence, and now something inside you is waking up. A voice, soft but steady. It says, "No more." No more shrinking to fit into places that were never meant for your fullness. No more apologizing for your feelings, your dreams, your voice. No more betraying yourself just to avoid being left behind. Because here's the truth. Every time you abandon yourself, you rehearse the pain of being unloved. But every time you return to yourself, you plant the seed of a new story. A story where love begins inside you, where your presence is enough, where your truth is not too loud or too soft. It's sacred. And this too is the revolution, to come back home. Not to a version of you that pleases the world, but to the one who knows, "I am not here to be chosen. I am here to choose myself, again and again, until wholeness becomes your new language, until no room is worth entering without your full presence, until love no longer requires sacrifice, but authenticity." This is how you stop the pattern. This is how you become free. What if the love you've been searching for isn't lost? What if it's simply been waiting for you to stop searching? We live in a world that teaches us to chase beauty, chase success, chase affection, recognition, belonging. We're handed a map at birth and told, "Follow this path, out there is everything you need to feel complete." But what happens when you reach the end of that path and still feel hollow? What if all the noise and striving were distractions? What if the treasure isn't at the end of the road but buried quietly at the center of your being? There comes a moment, soft, sacred, when the soul no longer wants to run, when the masks feel heavy, the noise too loud, and the chase too exhausting. That moment is not weakness, it's awakening. It's the moment you realize, "I am tired of seeking outside what already lives within." Imagine standing in front of a mirror, not the kind that shows your face, but the one that reflects your essence. And in that reflection, you don't see your achievements, your roles, or your wounds. You see a presence, quiet, steady, ancient. It's you, not the version you perform, but the one you abandoned long ago in exchange for approval. This is the inner home, the place where your joy doesn't need permission, where your grief is not shameful but sacred, where your love is not transactional but true. The journey back to this home is not linear. It's not quick. It doesn't always feel good, but it is holy. You return by listening deeply to what hurts. You return by forgiving the parts of you that once believed you were unworthy. You return by choosing presence over perfection, by sitting with yourself in the silence, even when it trembles with loneliness. And here's the miracle. As you turn inward, something shifts. The emptiness begins to fill, not from outside, but from your own embrace. You begin to feel warmth where there once was cold, peace where there once was panic, wholeness where there once was fracture. Because when you stop looking for someone to complete you, you begin to remember you were never broken. You were simply disconnected. And now the reunion begins. This is not about isolation. It's not about cutting yourself off from others. It's about reconnecting with the one person you've always needed most, you. Because when you come home to yourself, you stop begging the world to validate your existence. You walk differently. You love more freely. You no longer settle for crumbs because you've tasted the feast of your own soul. And from this inner sanctuary, everything changes. Relationships become more honest. Choices become more aligned. Life becomes less about proving and more about being. This is the deepest revolution of all. To realize, I am what I was seeking, not out there, in here, in the quiet, in the stillness, in the truth that never left. You are the love. You are the home. You are the answer. In a world that profits from your insecurity, loving yourself is a revolutionary act. You were never meant to doubt your worth. You were taught to, slowly, systematically. From the magazines that edited bodies into impossibility, to the classrooms that measured intelligence by conformity, to the families that rewarded obedience over authenticity, little by little, you were shaped into someone safe, predictable, palatable. You learned to shrink your joy, dim your anger, swallow your intuition, so you wouldn't be too much. And yet, no matter how much you contorted yourself, the world still asked for more, thinner, quieter, nicer, stronger, better, until one day something breaks, not in you but for you. You wake up and realize this isn't living, this is performing, and in that crack a wild, sacred question rises. What if I stopped trying to be lovable and simply loved myself? That moment is not self-indulgence, it is reclamation. Because to love yourself in a world that tells you not to is not vanity, it's resistance. It is the refusal to abandon your soul just to fit in. It is the decision to nourish your body because it carries you, not because it conforms. It is the choice to speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. It is saying, I matter, with your boundaries, your rest, your joy. And here's what they don't tell you. Self-love is not always soft. Sometimes it is fierce. It looks like walking away from what drains you. It sounds like silence when the world demands explanation. It feels like fire in your chest as you say no to what once held you captive. Because true self-love isn't about affirmations in the mirror. It's about radical alignment with your truth. It's about living in a way that doesn't betray your soul for belonging. And yes, it will cost you. It may cost you certain relationships, old identities, even comfort. But what you gain is something no one can take: inner freedom. Imagine a tree that no longer bends toward the light of others' approval. It grows upward, rooted, unapologetic, alive. This is you returning to your natural shape. This is the revolution, and it is both political and spiritual. Political, because systems collapse when people stop believing they are broken. Spiritual, because your soul expands every time you choose authenticity over acceptance. You become a living contradiction to a culture built on not enoughness. You stop consuming to fill a void that self-love has already healed. You stop apologizing for your presence. You begin to live, not from fear but from truth, and your very being becomes a lighthouse for others. A silent invitation. You too can be whole. You too can be free. This is not arrogance. This is sacred rebellion. This is choosing yourself, not against the world, but for your soul. And that changes everything. What happens when you finally realize that you don't need to be chosen? What happens when you stop waiting for someone to notice you, to validate your worth, to make space for you in a room that was never built with your soul in mind? You stop knocking. You stop explaining. You stop begging. And something miraculous happens. You sit down in your own presence and you realize, this is enough. Not the kind of enough that settles or compromises, but the kind that whispers, I'm no longer afraid to be with myself. For most of your life, you've been trained to reach outward, to gather approval like currency, to accumulate roles and titles like proof, to attach your value to how others respond to you. But all of that is noise, because the deepest belonging doesn't come from being accepted by the world. It comes from accepting yourself, from knowing, this is who I am. And I am not too much, I am not not enough. I am simply me. When you belong to yourself, your energy shifts. You walk differently. You speak with less urgency. You no longer chase what depletes you. There's a calmness in your presence, not because life is perfect, but because your foundation is no longer external. It's internal. It's anchored in a truth that cannot be shaken by rejection, comparison, or silence. Imagine this. You're in a crowded room, people talking, laughing, performing. And there you are, still quiet, whole. You are not performing, you are not seeking, you are simply being. And in that stillness you realize, I am not lonely, I am full. This is the power of enough. Not because you've stopped growing, but because you've stopped believing that worth is somewhere else. You've come home, and from this home, everything changes. You love without fear of abandonment, because you no longer abandon yourself. You give without resentment, because your cup is full. You choose with clarity, because your compass is internal, not public opinion. This kind of self-possession isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply is. And in its presence, the right people recognize you, not for who you pretend to be, but for who you truly are. And if they don't, you no longer crumble. Because you've stopped outsourcing your sense of self. You've remembered that solitude is not punishment, it's presence. That stillness is not emptiness, it's fullness. That being alone is not the same as being unloved. In fact, it might be the beginning of the truest love you've ever known. The love that does not fade, the love that does not betray, the love that lives within you, waiting to be chosen, not by others but by you. So choose yourself. Sit with your enoughness, and let the world adjust to your wholeness, not the other way around. Because when you belong to yourself, the revolution is complete. So now take a breath. Let everything you've heard settle into the soil of your heart. And ask yourself, when did I first learn that I had to earn love? What parts of me have I silenced in the name of being accepted? How often have I abandoned myself just to feel safe? And most importantly, am I ready to come home? Not to the image, not to the performance, but to the unfiltered, radiant truth of who I am, right now. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't need the world to agree. The path has always been inward, and maybe, just maybe, everything you've been searching for was never lost. It was waiting for you. If this video touched something deep in your soul, please consider supporting this channel with a super thanks. Your gift allows us to continue creating content that heals, awakens, and transforms. And if you're not already subscribed, join us. This journey is just beginning. Click to watch the next video now appearing on your screen. There we'll go even deeper into the soul's path toward wholeness. Until then, remember Jung's words, what you seek is not outside, but within, and within you is everything.